What if I told you the most powerful version of yourself isn't loud, isn't flashy, and doesn't need permission to exist? It's already inside you, waiting not to be discovered, but to be built. Welcome to the quiet revolution of becoming. Unshakable. Most people walk through life performing for the world, rarely meeting themselves. But what happens when you stop seeking validation and start acting like the best version of yourself is already real? You don't rise when the world notices you. You rise when you choose to live like the world's opinion means nothing. This is not ego, this is Stoic power. And once you taste it, you'll never go back to waiting for approval again. Let me dive into the practice. 1. No one thinks about you more than you think about yourself. Not your critics, not your friends, not even your parents. You are the narrator of your life, the observer, the director, and the audience, all wrapped into one. And yet most people hand over the script. They let others write their inner dialogue. They live like they're waiting for permission to feel worthy, waiting for someone to validate them, to finally say, "You're enough." But the Stoic sees through this illusion. The Stoic reclaims the pen. The Stoic knows your life is shaped by your thoughts, and your soul takes on the color of the ideas you feed it every single day. To act as if you are the best is not arrogance. It is not some loud performance or a way to posture over others. It is not about superiority. It is not about proving anything. It is not about pretending to be something you're not. It is about aligning your outer action with your highest inner standard. It's about becoming who you were meant to be by refusing to act like anything less. It is about living in accordance with the version of yourself that exists in the mirror of your own potential. You don't act as if you're the best to impress others. You act that way to remind yourself who you are and who you're becoming. That act, that posture of greatness, it's not a mask, it's a method. It's not a trick, it's a training. It's the daily rehearsal of truth until truth becomes your reflex. Until confidence is no longer something you try to summon but something you naturally radiate. Because when you walk with excellence in your mind, you don't have to speak it. It speaks for you. Your presence does the talking, not through noise, but through calm, not through flash, but through depth, not through volume, but through consistency. The Stoic doesn't chase attention. They command it by how they move, by how they choose, by how they show up when no one else is watching. Confidence doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's quiet, but always it's rooted. And so we begin where all power begins, with thought. Before the action, before the speech, before the choice, the thought comes first. Because everything in life is first imagined. Every decision, every leap, every hesitation, it's born in the mind before it's born in reality. The Stoic knows this. And so they guard that space like sacred ground, because they know the external world is just a shadow, a consequence of the internal world. What you believe about yourself echoes in how you walk. It spills into how you speak. It becomes the filter for what you accept and what you reject. You become the embodiment of what you consistently think. You can wear the right clothes, say the right words, perform the part. But if your thoughts are small, reactive, scattered, eventually, the illusion breaks. It always does, because the truth leaks. It shows up in your habits, in your silences, in your tone, in your decisions. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts," he wasn't offering a metaphor. He was giving you a blueprint, a compass, a warning, and a weapon. If your thoughts are laced with fear, your soul will carry that shade. If they're poisoned with doubt or consumed by comparison, your actions will wobble, your posture will falter. You will hesitate not because you lack ability, but because your mind is whispering a script of unworthiness. But if your mind is marinated in clarity, if it's forged in discipline, If it's trained in truth, if it's rooted in the philosophy of resilience, then that is the hue your soul will wear, and it will not need permission. It will simply exist. It will simply radiate. This is why acting like the best doesn't start with performance. It begins in silence. It begins in the early moments, before the noise of the world reaches in. That window right after you open your eyes is the gateway. It is the canvas. It is your first choice. Who are you today? Not based on your past, not based on others' expectations, but based on your present decision, based on the direction you choose. It sounds like this. I do not need their approval. I need my own alignment. I do not need applause. I need direction. I do not need to beat anyone else. I need to become the most honest version of myself. This is not vanity. This is vision. This is self-authorship. This is the quiet discipline of shaping your inner world. Because you become what you repeat, thought by thought, action by action. The Stoic doesn't ask, what will make me look good today? They ask, what will make me strong? What will bring me into alignment with my character? Who am I when the cameras are off? And then they live that way, not once, not occasionally, but repeatedly, daily, ritualistically. Because identity is not a moment, it's a pattern. It's a loyalty to your own standard. Every time you choose principle over ease, you cast a vote for the person you want to become. Every time you choose truth over noise, you build another layer in the foundation of your being. These are not random habits. They are bricks. Bricks you lay with awareness. Bricks that shape your structure. But here's the catch. The mind never stops thinking. Not for a moment. And just because a thought appears doesn't mean it deserves your attention. The Stoic strength begins with discernment. Discernment is the gatekeeper. It asks, is this thought worthy? Is this thought building me? Is this thought opening doors or anchoring chains? Discipline begins with attention, and attention is sacred. It is the sun that grows whatever you shine it on. So ask yourself daily, what am I watering? My fears or my focus? My doubts or my discipline? My wounds or my will? You do not have to be perfect. You don't need to have it all figured out. What you need is honesty. You need clarity. You need intentionality. You don't need to see the entire road. Just the next step, and the next, and the next. Each one taken in alignment with your best, with your truth, with the higher self that's always been inside you, waiting not to be found, but to be built. Your mind sets the trajectory, your actions follow, but the direction, the aim, the precision, it all starts in thought. So begin there. Begin where it matters, in the invisible sanctuary of the self. Guard that sanctuary. Shape it. Strengthen it. Refine it with every breath. Because from that mental garden grows the harvest of your life. And when you walk into your day with this mindset, not as a fantasy, but as a discipline, not as ego, but as embodiment, you'll realize you don't need to act like the best for others, you do it for you. Because the world does not need another person performing strength. The world needs people who have become it. Point two. To act like you are the best is not to drift into fantasies of some distant, polished version of yourself. It is not to wait for the perfect day, the perfect timing, or the right applause to begin showing up fully. It's not about imagining greatness as something that lives only in the future. No, the Stoic understands something most people miss entirely. The best version of you is not hiding behind some distant milestone. It's already here, right here, in this moment, in the next action you take, in the choice you make when no one is watching, in how you hold yourself in the ordinary seconds that everyone else treats as disposable. This is where discipline lives, not in the fantasy of tomorrow, but in the practice of presence. Because the present moment is not empty, it is the forge. It is the field where you either plant seeds of integrity or let weeds of neglect take root. And the Stoic knows this, is the real battleground, the now, this breath, this hour, this seemingly insignificant stretch of time when most are distracted or passive. This is where character is built or lost. To act like the best doesn't mean you constantly chase grand gestures or dramatic changes. It means you honor the next task with everything you have. Whether it's making your bed, reading a page, taking a breath, or responding to someone with grace, it all matters. Why? Because how you do anything reflects how you approach everything. There are no small actions to the one who treats life as sacred. Presence is not passivity. It is not waiting for life to happen. It is not idle observation. It is full command. It is radical engagement with the moment in front of you. It is the powerful decision to bring your entire self to whatever lies before you. Even if it's simple, even if it's unseen, even if it's thankless. Greatness is not born in the spotlight. It is shaped in the silence of repetition, in the humility of consistency, in the fierce loyalty to your highest values when there's no one around to clap for you. Epictetus asked, "How long will you wait before you demand the best from yourself?" That is not a rhetorical question. It is a mirror, and it deserves an answer, not later, not someday, but now, because waiting is a slow death. Waiting is a disguised excuse. Waiting makes promises it never keeps. And the Stoic doesn't wait. The Stoic moves. The Stoic commits. The Stoic acts not because it's easy or exciting, but because it's necessary, because presence is power. And those who master presence become unshakable not in image, but in truth. Discipline. True discipline is not just a checklist of visible achievements. It is not just waking early or running miles or reading books or crushing goals. Those are expressions. They are shadows. The real discipline lives deeper underneath. It lives in how you protect your energy. It lives in how you treat your time. It lives in how you preserve your attention. Because attention is currency. And most people are going bankrupt. To act like the best means realizing that your time is sacred. Your thoughts are sacred. Your energy is not unlimited. And so, discipline is choosing moment after moment what deserves your presence, what deserves your yes, and what must receive your no. Discipline is less about how hard you push and more about how wisely you aim. You begin to realize that each moment is an opportunity not just to perform, but to affirm who you are, to affirm what you value, to reaffirm your commitment to the kind of person you are becoming. This is why the Stoic does not rely on motivation, because motivation is fleeting. Some days it rises, some days it fades. But presence is a choice. Discipline is a habit. Excellence is a system. You don't need the world to remind you of your path when you've internalized it as your default rhythm. Even when the day is dull, even when your heart feels heavy, even when no one would blame you for taking the easier path, you choose to act like the best version of yourself, not because anyone's watching, but because you are. Your standard becomes your guide. And that standard is not dictated by circumstances. It is dictated by conviction. On the most average of days, you rise with uncommon resolve. You do not let routine numb you into mediocrity. You treat every task, no matter how menial, as a training ground for greatness. You sharpen your actions. You refine your presence. You tighten your process. Because this is who you are becoming, not accidentally, but deliberately. You walk into each day like your name is on the line, because in a sense it is. Your name, your character, your truth, it's on every task, every word, every moment. You do not wait for a stage. You build one in the silence of your choices. You fold your clothes like you're folding the fabric of your character. You write that message like it's a letter to your future self. You enter the room with posture not to look impressive, but because you carry the weight of integrity. You move through your world with a quiet dignity, not a performance, but an embodiment. This is the heart of Stoic power, to treat every action as a sacred act, to make your rituals a reflection of your values, to make your behaviors a testimony to your beliefs. Excellence is not an event, it is a devotion. And the Stoic does not just admire this, they live it. They make each motion matter. They build their life like it's a temple, brick by brick, thought by thought, choice by choice. And what they build is not for decoration, it is for dignity. It is a fortress not to keep others out, but to keep values in. A stronghold that critics can't penetrate and failure can't shake. Because greatness, real greatness, is not made of moments. It is made of patterns, daily, deliberate, repeated patterns of living with clarity and principle. The work of greatness does not take place under a spotlight. It happens in the mundane, in the messy, in the invisible corners of your life, when no one is there to cheer, when no one is there to notice. It is in those early mornings when you rise anyway. It is in those late nights when you finish what you promised yourself. It is in those seconds of hesitation where temptation calls and you respond with a quiet no. It is in how you respond to chaos with calm. It is in how you decline the easy way when the right way is harder. It is in how you hold your word like it matters, and it does. It all does. These are not just nice ideas. They are not poetic gestures. They are not abstract virtues. They are seeds. Seeds that grow into roots. Roots that grow into rituals. Rituals that shape your habits. And habits that build your identity. The small choices today. They are not small. They are architectural. Each one shapes the structure of your being. You are either building on rock or on sand. There is no neutral. Every moment either reinforces your foundation or erodes it. And so the Stoic chooses with eyes wide open, with purpose, with presence, with reverence, because they know the truth. The person you become tomorrow is already being written today. So act like the best version of yourself today, not because it's convenient. It won't be. Not because it's glamorous. It won't be. But because it's real, it's honest, it's who you are when you're not hiding behind fear or comparison. That version of you, the grounded one, the resilient one, the one who keeps walking when it's hard, is not a fantasy. It's a decision, a daily one, to uphold your standard when it would be easier to bend, to walk forward when shrinking feels safe, to show up, not because the world asked, but because your soul did. This is not a performance, it's a practice. And over time, practice becomes instinct, instinct becomes identity, and identity becomes presence, the kind that doesn't flinch, doesn't crumble, doesn't betray its values. You don't rise to your goals, you fall to the level of your rituals. So build those rituals, make them sacred, let them guide you when motivation fades. Let them carry you when willpower weakens. Let them speak for you when your voice is tired. And one day, you'll look back not with regret, but with quiet respect, not because you were perfect, but because you were faithful to your truth, to your craft, to your path. Confidence. It's a word that's often misunderstood, misused, and misrepresented. Most people imagine confidence as something loud, something bold and brash, something that walks into a room demanding attention. They think of confidence as bravado, as noise, as dominance. But the Stoic knows better. The Stoic has felt something different, something deeper. They know that real confidence doesn't announce itself. It does not shout. It does not strive. It simply is. It's not about posture, it's about principle. It's not about performance, it's about peace. Real confidence is not built in the presence of applause, but in the absence of it. It's not grown through external praise. It's forged in the crucible of inner alignment. You don't build confidence by proving things to the world. You build it by keeping your word to yourself. You build it by acting in integrity when no one is watching, when the rewards are invisible, when the work is inconvenient. You say you are focused. Show it not with short bursts of passion, but with long stretches of undistracted labor. You say you are disciplined. Prove it not with grand displays, but in the repetition of quiet, daily choices that no one else even sees. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need to convince others of your worth when you already know it. The Stoic walks with confidence not because they are always right, but because they are always rooted in values, rooted in truth, rooted in a kind of internal stillness that the chaos of the world cannot disturb. And when you live in integrity, when your thoughts, your words, and your actions are aligned, you feel it. You feel that strength. You feel that freedom. It's not forced. It flows. It moves through your breath, your tone, your silence. It shows in how you listen, in how you respond, in how you hold yourself in tension. It shows in how you don't need to dominate a conversation to feel strong, in how you don't need to win every debate to feel secure. You're no longer interested in impressing. You're interested in becoming. You're interested in being. That's the power of confidence built on integrity. It doesn't rise and fall with opinions. It doesn't shift with the winds of circumstance. It's not a performance, it's a presence. The kind that stays even when the lights go off. The kind that holds steady even when the crowd goes silent. The kind that remains not because you were seen but because you were whole. The Stoic knows the most important relationship you will ever have is with your own conscience. And when that relationship is clean, you walk differently. You speak with clarity, not because you're fearless, but because you trust the one facing the fear you. You trust the one making the decision you. You trust the one standing in uncertainty you. That trust is not given. It is earned daily, quietly, privately. Confidence, then, is not some mystical quality bestowed upon the chosen few. It is a consequence, a result, a byproduct of 1,000 small decisions made in silence. It is built every time you decline what pulls you away from your purpose. It is built when you say no to distraction and yes to what demands more of you. It is built when you protect your morning routine like sacred ground. When you do the thing you said you would do, not for credit, but for congruence. And the irony, the more you live in integrity, the less you feel the need to talk about it. You stop signaling worth because you are too busy living it. You stop chasing validation because your direction no longer requires permission. People start noticing something different not because you told them to, but because they feel it. They feel the stillness in you, the steadiness, the silence. That speaks louder than noise. The Stoic leads with example, not with ego. They influence not through force, but through embodiment. Their presence becomes a lighthouse, not flashy, but firm, not dramatic, but directional. You can't fake that kind of confidence. You can't borrow it. You can't manufacture it through aesthetics or titles. It's something you grow into, something you practice, something you live. Let your life be your argument. Let your choices speak for you. Let your habits reflect what you believe. And when your outer world aligns with your inner truth, something profound happens. Peace. You no longer need to defend your worth. You no longer shrink when misunderstood. You no longer hustle for validation because you're no longer seeking proof. You've already become it. This is not arrogance. This is authority, the kind that can't be faked, copied, or stolen. It's born in the early mornings when you choose discipline over delay. It's found in the uncomfortable spaces where most people escape but you remain. It's carved in the moments when you want to quit, but don't. and over time, it becomes instinct, a second nature, a way of existing that doesn't just serve your ego, it serves your soul. And that feeling, the one that comes from knowing you didn't cut corners, didn't compromise, didn't betray your values when it would have been easier to do so, that feeling is priceless. That feeling is rare. That feeling is the fuel, not the flashy kind, the foundational kind, the kind that burns quietly but never goes out. You don't rise because the world finally notices you. You rise because you've built something inside that the world cannot shake. Not rejection, not failure, not success. You've made your confidence indestructible by anchoring it to character, not applause. And as you carry this inner alignment into every space you enter, you change the energy, not by dominating, not by performing, but by being a mirror of stability, a reflection of discipline, a presence of calm. You create clarity not by forcing it but by being it. People won't always be able to name what they feel around you, but they will feel something. They will feel your stillness, your groundedness, your direction. They will feel a kind of presence that isn't loud but lasts, a kind of strength that doesn't crush but lifts, a kind of quiet power that doesn't need the spotlight to be known. This is the confidence of the Stoic, not the confidence of bravado, not the confidence that flexes, the confidence that knows, the kind that arises when you no longer have anything to prove, not because you've done it all, but because you've aligned with what matters, with what's true, with what's real. So let your integrity be your identity. Let your rhythm be your reason. Let your daily actions be the proof that you have nothing to prove. Let your life whisper what your mouth doesn't need to shout. You don't need to convince anyone you're enough. You just need to become the kind of person who already knows they are. And the way to become that person is not through perfection. It's through practice, through presence, through showing up in truth over and over again. Let that be your strength. Let that be your armor, not to shield yourself from the world, but to protect the sacredness of your inner alignment. Because what you do regularly becomes what you trust, and what you trust becomes who you are. And who you are, moment by moment, becomes the legacy you leave long after you're gone. Confidence isn't something you chase. It's something you cultivate from the inside out, one honest action at a time. The mind never truly rests. Even in stillness, it stirs. Thoughts flow like rivers, ceaseless and untamed. Memory, instinct, emotion, all pulling at your attention, all demanding a piece of your focus. The Stoic does not fight this reality. The Stoic does not attempt to silence the mind completely. That would be foolish. Instead, they learn to steer it, to shape it, to refine its flow like a craftsman, directing a powerful current. Because the mind, like water, will flood and destroy or nourish and build depending on how it is guided. Stillness is not the absence of thought. It is not a blank slate. It is the mastery of attention. It is the discipline of choosing, of filtering, of returning again and again to what matters, to what is useful, to what is true. It is not detachment. It is not laziness. It is not passivity. It is command. It is clarity. Most people live in reaction. They are yanked from one moment to the next by impulses, by headlines, by their own undisciplined internal dialogue. They absorb every opinion. They chase every worry. They respond to every trigger, and in doing so, they scatter their power. They leak their strength. They become consumed not by life but by noise. The Stoic does something different. The Stoic does not absorb, they examine. They interrogate every thought. They pause before responding. They ask, is this mine? Is this useful? Is this building my future or keeping me stuck in the past? This is not just a mental habit, it is a moral discipline. Because every thought you allow in becomes a brick in the foundation of your life. Let in lies, and you will live in confusion. Let in fear, and your actions will tremble. Let in clarity, and your steps will become steady. Stillness, then, is power. Not because it makes you passive, but because it makes you selective. It trains you to protect your focus like it is sacred real estate, because it is. What you allow into your mind will eventually come out through your words, your actions, your decisions. And so, the Stoic becomes a gatekeeper, not of others but of themselves. To act like the best means to think like the best. And to think like the best, you must master what you allow to grow inside you. You must stop feeding the thoughts that break you. You must stop rehearsing stories that weaken you. You must stop replaying mental loops that do nothing but drain you. The Stoic does not deny reality, they clarify it. They remove the fog. They trim the excess. They focus their inner energy like a blade sharpened on simplicity and strength. In this modern world of noise, distraction is an epidemic. Everyone wants your attention. Everyone wants your reaction. Every platform, every notification, every headline is engineered to scatter you. And yet the Stoic remains focused, not because it's easy, but because they have trained for it. Because they know the one who controls their attention controls their life. This is the hidden lever, the invisible discipline, the overlooked skill. Stillness is not just about peace. It is about power. It is about protecting your mind as if it were a garden. What you plant will grow. What you tolerate will multiply. What you feed will consume you. So feed what strengthens. Feed what aligns. Feed what brings you back to your center. This doesn't mean you stop thinking. It means you stop believing every thought. It means you become selective with what you dwell on. It means you take a breath and ask, does this thought lead me toward my highest self or away from it? You begin to trust that not every mental impulse deserves your time. Not every fear deserves your surrender. Not every desire deserves your chase. Stillness allows you to move through life with poise. It gives you the ability to respond, not react, to listen, not just speak, to wait, not just rush. And in doing so, it makes you stronger, because in stillness, you are no longer moved by every wind. You are grounded. You are anchored. You are free. When others spiral into panic, the Stoic breathes. When others scream to be heard, the Stoic listens for truth. When others rush to speak, the Stoic pauses for clarity, because the Stoic knows it is better to move slowly in the right direction than to sprint aimlessly toward chaos. Stillness is not weakness, it is strength under control. It is restraint in a world addicted to reaction. It is composure when others collapse, and that composure becomes your influence. That calm becomes your presence. People are drawn to it even if they can't explain why. Because stillness feels like truth. It feels like peace. It feels like clarity in a storm. To cultivate stillness, you must become ruthless with your inputs. You must guard your environment. You must ask, what am I consuming? What am I allowing in? This means choosing books over endless scrolling, choosing silence over chatter, choosing purpose over stimulation. It means creating moments where you can return to yourself, to check your compass, to align your actions, to remember who you are. Stillness is where wisdom gathers. It's where the noise quiets and the truth becomes audible. It's where you stop reacting and start creating. And in that creation, you become powerful, not because the world sees you, but because you finally see yourself. This is why the Stoic chooses silence when the world demands noise. Not to escape, but to reconnect. Not to isolate, but to remember. Because in that silence, the ego quiets, the posturing ends, the soul exhales, and what remains is clarity. And from that clarity, You move not in a rush, but in alignment. You choose not based on fear, but based on principle. You act not to be seen, but to be solid. You speak not to impress, but to express something real. Stillness is the beginning. It is not the end goal, it is the birthplace of excellence. Because every powerful action, every strong identity, every moment of greatness begins in stillness, in pause, in presence. And so, the Stoic builds it, protects it, honors it, not with perfection, but with practice. They carve out time to reflect. They create space for breath. They treat their mind like a temple, not to worship, but to refine. Stillness becomes the place they return to when chaos knocks, when emotion rises, when decisions loom. They don't run to opinions. They don't chase approval. They go inward. They listen. They discern. And then they move. You can feel this kind of power. It's not aggressive. It's not dominant. It's not loud. It's something else, something deeper, something that cannot be faked or rushed or borrowed. It is earned. It is trained. It is built. The world will always try to rush you, to pressure you, to provoke you. But the Stoic resists that rhythm. The Stoic moves at the speed of truth, not slower, not faster, just right. Because in stillness, they have found something. Most never will dash sovereignty. To act like the best is to move from this place, this inner space, this sacred center. And when you do, your actions become sharper, your choices become cleaner, your direction becomes undeniable, not because you've said anything, but because you've shown everything. Stillness does not look like much on the outside, but inside it is a storm of restraint, a furnace of focus, a well of wisdom. And from that well, your best self drinks. So sit with it, build it, return to it. Because when the noise of the world fades, what remains is what you've built within. Let that be your strength. Let that be your guide. Let that stillness be your PowerPoint. Power. It's one of the most sought after forces in the world, yet also one of the most misunderstood. People chase it thinking it comes from dominance, from control, from the ability to bend others to their will or draw crowds to their charisma. But the Stoic sees power through an entirely different lens. For the Stoic, power is not a performance. It's not loud. It's not imposed. True power is quiet, subtle, rooted. It comes not from the ability to manipulate others, but from the discipline to master yourself. To act as if you are the best, you must carry this kind of quiet power, not the kind that roars, but the kind that holds. Not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that earns it without ever asking. This is power born from restraint, from composure, from the clarity of knowing who you are. Even when the world tries to tell you otherwise, the Stoic knows real strength is not shown in ease, but in pressure. Anyone can look composed when the skies are clear, but can you stay centered in a storm? Can you remain grounded when chaos spins around you? Can you walk forward when uncertainty screams in your ear? That's the test. That's where quiet power is born, not in the spotlight, but in the shadows of difficult choices. And here's the paradox. The more you try to control others, the more you lose control of yourself. The more you chase validation, the more you forfeit your inner stability. But when you stop needing to be seen, when you stop performing for approval, when you start showing up with integrity, power rises from within. It no longer needs to be proven. It simply becomes who you are. This kind of power doesn't flinch. It doesn't need to win every argument. It doesn't interrupt others just to be heard. It doesn't rush to defend itself against every critic. It stands tall, not with arrogance, but with assurance, not with noise, but with stillness. When you walk into a room with quiet power, people notice not because you speak first, but Because your presence speaks for you. There's a weight to you, a calm, a self-possession, not born from ego, but from earned alignment, from deep-rooted consistency, from the inner work that most people are too distracted to do. You don't need to yell to be heard. Your discipline speaks volumes. You don't need to flash your success to feel worthy. Your restraint does the talking. When others act out in desperation, you remain deliberate. When others demand recognition, you are content with reality. Because you know the loudest in the room is often the weakest. The most powerful are too busy building to be busy boasting. This is not a flashy power. It won't trend. It doesn't seek headlines. It won't be showered in constant praise. But it transforms you. And when you are transformed, so is the world. Around you, this power is forged in the mundane, in the repetition, in the silence. It's in the decisions no one will ever see. It's in the early mornings when you wake up before your excuses. It's in the late nights when you finish what you said you would. It's in the tiny habits that, brick by brick, build something immovable. True power comes from saying no to temptation, no to shortcuts, no to distraction. It comes from saying yes to the work, yes to the hard truth, yes to your highest standard, even when it hurts. It's in the self-correction, in the quiet humility of admitting where you've fallen short, and the relentless drive to rise anyway. And this is why the Stoic doesn't waste energy trying to impress. Because energy is finite. They don't throw themselves into every conflict. They don't argue every point. They don't reach for popularity or chase every trend. They reserve that energy for something greater, for becoming, for sustaining their inner world when the outer world goes sideways. Their power is not a mask, it's a mirror of the values they hold, of the boundaries they protect, of the order they maintain in a world that profits off of disorder. They don't flail when criticized. They don't falter when ignored. Because they've found something deeper than attention. They've found truth. And that truth becomes their compass. When everyone else is spinning, they stay straight. When everyone else is pulled into noise, they return to silence. They do not drift with the tide. They do not bend to the temperature of the room. They carry their own climate. They regulate themselves. And in doing so, they become unshakable. This is the kind of power that cannot be stolen. It cannot be copied. It cannot be inflated with fake praise or deflated with cheap criticism. It is not rooted in what others think. It is rooted in what you know, and what you know is earned, not imagined. It is shaped in moments of solitude, in hard decisions, in disciplined silence. When you act like the best, you embody this power. You don't chase it, you don't perform it, you live it, and in living it, you build trust not just with others, but with yourself. That trust becomes your foundation. That foundation becomes your strength. So when you look in the mirror, you don't just see a face, you see a soul you trust. You see someone who stood firm. Someone who said no when it mattered. Someone who didn't flinch when it would have been easier to fold. Someone who didn't need the world's cheer to stay committed. Someone who showed up not because the conditions were perfect, but because the mission mattered more than the mood. That's the quiet power of a Stoic. It doesn't ask for recognition. It doesn't need spotlight. It shines through consistency, through clarity, through composure. You don't have to shout to be remembered. When you carry yourself with this kind of conviction, you will be remembered, because presence leaves a mark. You stop chasing approval because you no longer operate from need. You act not to be seen, but because it's who you are. And that kind of authenticity is rare. It is valuable. It is magnetic. People can sense it. They may not be able to explain it, but they feel the difference. They feel the steadiness, the rootedness, the quiet control. And in a world that is so loud, so reactive, So constantly striving to be more and show more, your quiet power becomes a light, not because it blinds others but because it guides them. You become a reminder, a reflection, a standard. That power, subtle, silent, sustained, is what it means to act like the best. Not a title, not a costume, not a facade, but a living testament, a daily decision, a practiced presence, and it is available to you, always, not through luck, not through chance, but through deliberate devotion, through self-leadership, through the choice to act not like someone pretending to be great, but like someone who's quietly becoming it. 1. To act like you are the best is not to decorate the outside while neglecting the inside. It is not to shine your image while your integrity rusts. It is not to craft the perfect persona while your principles fall into disrepair. The Stoic knows this trap well, how easy it is to polish your words while your mind grows dull, to look successful while your character crumbles in silence. And so, the Stoic rejects appearances in favor of essence. They do not chase the illusion of greatness, they pursue inner excellence, slow and steady, like a sculptor with a chisel in one hand and a mirror in the other. Inner excellence is not a performance. It is not for applause or attention. It is not something you wear like a badge, it's something you earn and then embody. It is who you are when all masks fall away. It is the version of you that remains when no one is looking, when nothing is being measured, when nothing needs to be proved. It is the quiet integrity that whispers, I am still here, I am still aligned, even in the absence of reward. And here is where the Stoic stands apart. The world trains us to chase outcomes, to optimize for visibility, for recognition, for milestones and metrics. But the Stoic asks a better question, not what do I have, but who am I becoming? Not what will this bring me, but what is this shaping in me? Because excellence is not a goal. It is a way, a path, a discipline. It is the ongoing, relentless practice of becoming someone you respect. Not because you're flawless, but because you're faithful. Not because you always win, but because you don't quit on your values when losing would be easier. To refine yourself from the inside out means to turn your attention to the small, unnoticed places. Your thoughts, your impulses, your reactions, the tone in your voice when you're irritated, the way you speak about others when they're not in the room, the way you think when you're tired, or hurt, or unsure. These are the invisible arenas where real mastery is forged. The Stoic is not casual about character. They approach it like a craftsman approaches stone, with patience, with care, with reverence. They do not expect perfection, but they demand progress. They carve away what does not serve. They smooth out what is rough. They sharpen what is dull. And every day, they return to the work not because someone is watching, but because they know that the inside is the foundation for everything else. This is the art of inner excellence. Not to appear strong, but to be strong. Not to speak virtue, but to live it. Not to mimic discipline, but to let it govern your habits. Not to act like someone with purpose, but to let purpose shape your every act. And this pursuit is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is not glamorous. It is humble, repetitive, quiet, but it is sacred. It is sacred because it's honest, sacred because it resists shortcuts, sacred because it aligns your behavior with your beliefs. And in that alignment, you find peace, not comfort, not ease, but peace, the kind of peace that comes from knowing that even if no one sees your progress, you see it. Even if no one celebrates your growth, you feel it. This is not self-indulgence. This is not vanity. This is not obsession with self. This is stewardship. This is responsibility. This is love, not the soft kind, but the sharp kind. The kind of love that holds you to a higher standard. The kind of love that calls you out when you're lazy. The kind that says, You are capable of more, and I will not let you forget that. The Stoic does not confuse self-love with self-excuse. They know that real love is accountability, that it is not love to let yourself drift when you were made to walk strong. It is not love to let comfort rob you of character. It is not love to betray your values for the sake of ease. And so they ask not once, but often, who am I becoming through this choice, through this thought, through this conversation, through this day? They understand that every action, no matter how small, is shaping something, that every repetition is a vote, that every compromise is a direction. They do not aim for perfection, they aim for alignment, for coherence between what they say and what they do, between what they believe and how they behave, between the world they wanted to build and the habits they build it with. This is why the Stoic cleans their space not because someone told them to, but because order on the outside reinforces order within. This is why they rise early not because it's trendy, but because they want to meet themselves before the world gets to them. This is why they keep their word, even when no one remembers it, because they remember. And that matters. Inner excellence is not about winning a competition. It's not about being better than others. It's about being loyal to your potential, about becoming the version of you that stands tall in the mirror not because you made it, but because you're still standing, still showing up, still building something honest from the inside. That version of you does not live in the future. It is not waiting behind the next achievement or the next transformation. It is here. It is born every time you choose courage over comfort, every time you turn down distraction to meet your responsibilities, every time you forgive, every time you act with integrity when no one would know otherwise. That is where the real you is being formed. And as you refine the self, as you chip away what is false and feed what is true, you become less reactive, less desperate, less scattered. You begin to walk with a kind of groundedness that others feel before you say a word. You begin to think more clearly, speak more intentionally, act more consistently. This is not about ego. It's about embodiment. It's not about crafting a brand. It's about becoming a person, someone solid, someone dependable, someone principled, someone who doesn't need external proof because their internal compass never stopped pointing north. And the reward, it's not status, it's not power, it's not applause. The reward is integrity, the quiet, steady knowledge that you are living in a way that earns your own respect, that you are the kind of person you used to look up to, that when you speak, you're not echoing someone else's truth, you're expressing your own. This is what it means to act as if you are the best, not to pretend, not to fake it, but to build it from the inside out, to refine yourself in solitude, to polish yourself in silence, to show up for yourself not because it's easy, but because it's right. And in time, that refinement becomes your reality, that integrity becomes your instinct, that consistency becomes your strength. You no longer need to announce who you are. You no longer need to chase validation. You simply are, and that is enough, too. The mirror never lies, but the question is, do you have the courage to look into it? Not just to see your reflection, but to see your truth, to act as if you are the best, is to live in a way that makes that reflection undeniable, not polished, not filtered, but real. Because sooner or later, you'll find yourself standing in front of the one person you cannot escape, you alone. No audience, no spotlight, just your eyes meeting your own in the silence. And in that moment, the question will rise not, do others believe in me, but do I believe in me? The Stoic doesn't use the mirror for vanity. They use it for verification. It is not a stage for praise, it is a compass for course correction. It does not care how others see you. It demands that you ask yourself, am I showing up as someone I would follow? as someone I respect, as someone I would trust in the fire of difficulty. Most people avoid this kind of honesty. They glance at their reflection and quickly move on. They judge the surface and ignore the substance. But the Stoic lingers. They don't flinch. They observe. They confront. They ask deeper questions. Did I move through this day with intention or reaction? Did I build what matters or drift into distraction? Did I uphold my standards or betray them for convenience? This is not about guilt. It's not about self-judgment. It's about alignment. The mirror is not a courtroom, it is a compass. It is not there to punish. It is there to point, and every day, it gives you the same invitation to return, to refine, to realign, not for show, but for self. And in this process, the Stoic discovers something profound. The person they are becoming is not distant, not imaginary, not mythical. That person is shaped daily through micro choices, through the way they respond to boredom, to fatigue, to temptation, to failure, through the way they keep going even when their motivation has left the room. Because confidence is not built when everything is easy, it is built when you act with strength anyway. It's not about how impressive you are in moments of success, but how consistent you are in moments of struggle. And every day, the mirror reveals whether you have honored that path or stepped away from it. You look into the mirror not to judge your appearance, but to check your alignment. It's not the wrinkles on your face that define you, it's the lines you draw with your values. It's not your hairstyle, it's your gaze. It's not your clothes, it's the conviction you wear beneath them. And if you stare long enough, you'll start to see more. You'll see whether you've been pretending, whether you've been hiding, whether you've been dimming your light to make others comfortable, whether you've been acting out of fear when you were made to act out of truth. To act like you are the best does not mean you walk around faking confidence. It means you live in a way that makes confidence unnecessary to fake. Because when you keep your promises to yourself, when you honor your rituals, when you show up with discipline and honesty, you don't need to appear powerful. You become it. And that power shows up in your eyes, in your silence, in the way you hold yourself when you speak, in the way you listen, in the way you say no when others expect a yes, in the way you say enough when others want you to stay small. The Stoic's mirror doesn't ask, "Are you liked?" It asks, "Are you real?" It doesn't ask, "Did they clap?" It asks, "Did you live by your principles?" It doesn't care about popularity. It cares about peace. Because that peace, that internal stillness, is the true scoreboard. It is what allows you to sleep soundly and wake up proud. And that peace cannot be bought. It cannot be borrowed. It must be earned through self-respect, through daily discipline, through moment-by-moment alignment. When you carry integrity, like it's the most precious thing you own, something in you changes. You walk taller not because you want to impress, but because your spine carries the weight of truth. You speak more carefully not because you fear judgment, but because your words are now sacred. You value your time not because of how much you have to do, but because you finally understand what your time is building. You become more selective not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. You say no to drama, to gossip, to distractions not because you're better than others, but because you've seen what's on the other side of focus. You've seen what your life looks like when it is ruled by intention rather than impulse. You begin to notice that you are no longer triggered by every insult, every slight, every whisper. You no longer take the bait. You no longer need to prove yourself in rooms that don't know your story. Because your story is not for everyone. It's for you. It's for the mirror. It's for the quiet voice that says, keep going, keep building, keep becoming. This is what the Stoic understands, that the real victory is not in being recognized by the world, but in being recognized by yourself. that the most important validation is not external, it is internal. And when that validation is strong, the world can say what it wants. You are unmoved. Because now, the way you make your bed reflects the way you carry your purpose. The way you respond to delay reflects your level of patience. The way you treat strangers reflects your internal world. There are no small actions, only reflections of who you are. You clean the kitchen not because it's glamorous, but because order is a form of respect. You respond to the email carefully, not because it matters to someone else, but because you know that how you do everything matters to you. You finish the workout not because of the calories burned, but because finishing what you start is part of who you are now. You become someone who cannot hide from themselves, and that's a gift, because the moment you stop hiding is the moment you begin living. Not a life of perfection, but of truth. Not a life free of flaws, but a life full of integrity. A life where the gap between what you say and what you do begins to close. A life where your outer actions and inner world begin to match. And that is when your presence becomes undeniable. Not because it's loud, but because it's aligned. Not because you demand attention, but because you radiate it. The mirror is no longer your enemy. It becomes your witness. Not a source of shame, but a source of accountability. Not something to avoid, but something to return to. Not to criticize, but to remember. So the next time you stand in front of the mirror, don't rush past. Don't look away. Settle. Breathe. Look deeper. Ask the questions that scare you. Answer with honesty, not ego. And if the answer isn't what you hoped for, do not despair. Begin again. Because that's what the Stoic does. They don't use the mirror to measure their worth. They use it to measure their direction. They don't chase the illusion of who they wish they were. They wake up and build who they are. Day by day, thought by thought, choice by choice. You don't need to be perfect to face the mirror. You need to be honest. You don't need to be admired. You need to be aligned. You don't need to win every day. You just need to show up for yourself and keep going. And when you do, you become someone worth facing. Someone whose reflection reflects not just a face, but a soul. One that stands tall not because they're untouched by struggle, but because they're full of truth. One. To act as if you are the best is not to walk through life untouched by hardship. It is not to pretend that you're above pain, that you're immune to loss, or that you're incapable of breaking. That is not strength. That is denial. And denial is fragile. The Stoic understands this deeply. They do not aim to avoid adversity. They prepare to be forged by it. To be unshakable does not mean you never tremble. It means that, even when you do, your roots hold. Your foundation stays strong. You remain standing not because the winds don't blow, but because you've anchored your soul in something deeper than circumstance. Adversity will come. Life guarantees it. You will be tested not once, but many times. You will be disappointed, misunderstood, overlooked, rejected. You will try and fail. You will give your best and still fall short. You will love and lose. And in all of this, you'll be offered a choice to shrink or to rise, to flinch or to fortify, to surrender to the weight or to build the strength, to carry it. The Stoic chooses the latter, not out of arrogance, but out of responsibility, not out of pride, but out of purpose, because they understand that difficulty is not a punishment, it is a mirror. It reveals what's real. It burns away the false. It tests your identity, not to break you, but to reveal you. You become unshakable not by avoiding storms, but by walking through them, eyes open, values intact, feet steady. It is in hardship where the weak collapse, but the disciplined are revealed. Pain does not define the Stoic. It refines them. They do not waste time asking, "Why me?" They ask, "What now? What is this building in me? What is this moment?" asking of me, what opportunity lies hidden in this adversity? Because they know suffering, when met with integrity, becomes transformation. Every trial, every moment of discomfort, every setback, it becomes training. It becomes another layer of armor, not to protect ego, but to protect purpose. The Stoic trains themselves to endure not through sheer grit, through clarity. They understand that life will not always make sense, that emotions will swell, that the path will be unclear, but the compass they carry is internal, and it always points true. This is what makes them unshakable, not that they are emotionless, but that their emotions do not lead them away from principle, not that they are indifferent, but that they care too much to let circumstance dictate character. You will not always feel strong. That's not the point. The point is to stay aligned when strength wavers, to act with courage when fear is present, to move forward even when uncertainty clouds the way. And the more you do this, the more resilient you become, not through some magical transformation, but through repetition. Because resilience is a habit, composure is a practice, grit is a daily decision, and the person who keeps choosing their values over their feelings becomes a force that life cannot shake. The Stoic does not wish for easier days. They build a stronger mind. They do not pray for fewer burdens. They train for a stronger back. They do not dream of a world free of conflict. They commit to showing up with peace, even in the middle of it. They are not surprised by difficulty. They are ready for it. They expect that life will challenge them, and they respond with groundedness, with perspective, with presence, because they know nothing reveals who you are like resistance. Nothing clarifies like conflict. Nothing purifies like pressure. To be unshakable, you must become deeply acquainted with yourself. You must know your boundaries, know your values, know your non-negotiables. And when life pushes, you don't push back with chaos, you stand still with conviction. This doesn't mean you won't fall. You will, many times. But falling is not failing. Quitting is. What makes you unshakable is not that you never stumble, it's that you rise again. With grace, with strength, with more understanding than before. You learn how to breathe through the pain, how to pause before reacting, how to ask yourself not, how do I escape this, but how do I grow from this? You stop treating hardship as something unfair. You begin to see it as something formative. And that shift right there is the mark of a person who has stepped out of victimhood and into leadership. You do not have to enjoy the struggle to respect it. You do not have to welcome adversity with open arms, but you can meet it with open eyes, with a spine that holds, even when your heart aches, with a mindset that says, this will not define me, it will refine me. And as you begin to walk through life this way, something inside you hardens, not into bitterness, but into resilience. You no longer break when others do. You no longer shatter when things don't go your way, because your sense of self is no longer wrapped around circumstance. It's wrapped around clarity, purpose, truth. This is what the Stoic builds, not a perfect life, but a principled one. A life that doesn't collapse under criticism. A life that doesn't dissolve under pressure. A life that may tremble, but never crumbles. Because the Stoic has made peace with reality. They do not demand certainty. They choose to be certain in how they show up. They do not chase comfort. They are comforted by consistency. They do not hope for easy. They prepare for whatever is necessary. This kind of strength isn't born in theory. It is born in the fire. It is forged in long nights, in quiet recoveries, in silent refusals to give up, in the steady pulse of a person who has decided that they will not betray who they are, no matter what life takes from them. You will be tested. Expect it. Welcome it. Let it teach you. Let it shape you. Let it build in you the kind of foundation that even chaos cannot. Shake. You do not need to be without wounds to be unshakable. You only need to stop letting your wounds be your excuse. You do not need to have all the answers. You only need to keep walking with your eyes open, your head high, and your values intact. Let your scars be signs of survival, not shame. Let your trials become your training. Let your struggle become your story, not one of defeat, but one of rising. Because to be unshakable is not to be untouchable. It is to be undefeated in your will, untouched in your principles, unmoved in your identity. And when you live that way, the world takes notice, not because you try to be impressive, but because you've become impossible to ignore. Quiet, consistent, whole, a soul standing tall even when everything else falls. This is the Stoic's legacy. And it can be yours too, not by chance, but by choice, the choice to rise. 1. To act like you are the best is not just a mindset for the big moments. It's not reserved for speeches, spotlights, or stages. It's not a tool to wield only when the stakes are high or the audience is watching. No, to truly embody that level of presence, you must bring it into everything, into the smallest gestures, into the unseen moments, into the daily rhythms of your life. Because greatness doesn't wait for the perfect opportunity, it inhabits every opportunity, especially the ones that seem ordinary. The Stoic lives by this truth. How you do anything is how you do everything. It's not about the size of the task, it's about the quality of your presence within it. Excellence isn't something you switch on when it's convenient. It's something you carry, like a compass, like an internal code. Whether you're tying your shoes or signing a contract, your values go with you. It's easy to be intentional when the pressure is on, but the Stoic aims to be just as intentional when no one is watching, when no one will remember, when no one will give them credit. Because it's in those moments, the ones that pass by unnoticed, that character is formed. You don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of your preparation. You default to the patterns you've practiced, and those patterns, they're born in the mundane. So when the Stoic wakes up, they don't rise lazily into distraction. They wake with dignity. They understand that the way you begin the day matters, not because the morning is magical, but because the morning is yours. You claim it, or you surrender it. And if you surrender the first hour, chances are you'll surrender the rest. The way you move through your space speaks volumes about how you treat your life. Are you careless with your environment? Then likely, you are careless with your thoughts. Are you quick to anger in traffic? Then likely, you are quick to compromise under pressure. The Stoic observes these signals not with shame, but with curiosity. Because every interaction, no matter how trivial, reveals the state of your inner world. How do you greet a stranger? How do you respond to a delay? How do you behave when no one is taking notes? That's where your philosophy is revealed. That's where your strength is tested. That's where your integrity is refined. You don't need a platform to practice presence. You don't need a mission to move with purpose. You don't need an audience to show up with excellence. All you need is a willingness to treat every moment as meaningful, because it is. And here's what's powerful. When you start living this way, you build a reputation not just with others, but with yourself. You become someone you can count on, someone you trust, someone whose identity is consistent no matter the context. This is the quiet revolution the Stoic embraces. Not in grand gestures, but in repeated, deliberate actions aligned with values. Even silence becomes a statement. Even patience becomes a power move. The way you listen fully when someone else speaks, that's a form of excellence. The way you pause before responding in anger, that's power. The way you clean up after yourself when no one would notice if you didn't, that's self-respect. Because every moment is an opportunity to act like the best, not in arrogance, but in alignment. You stop waiting for significance and start choosing it. You stop performing and start embodying. And the more you do, the more you discover. This way of living doesn't just change your habits, it changes your identity. You become more attentive, more composed, more resilient. You're harder to provoke, easier to trust, slower to anger. You begin to carry a calm that others feel before you even speak. Not because you're perfect, but because you've made peace your practice. And as you walk this path, something else shifts. Your energy. You no longer leak it trying to control outcomes. You conserve it by focusing on what you can control: your effort, your attitude, your awareness. You stop reacting to everything. You begin responding. That shift from reaction to response is the hallmark of the Stoic. It's what separates the person who's ruled by circumstance from the one who rules themselves. It's what gives the Stoic their strength, because they've made every interaction a mirror, every behavior a reflection, every action a thread in the fabric of their character. And here's the beautiful truth. It doesn't take more time. It doesn't require fame or wealth or approval. It only requires presence, intention, a commitment to show up as if everything matters, because it does. When you walk this way, people begin to notice, not because you're loud, but because you're clear, not because you demand attention, but because you've become someone worth paying attention to. And more importantly, you notice. You start to feel that sacred fire inside you burning, not with the desire to impress, but with the will to live well, to walk tall, to move with grace, to treat your life like something that matters, because it does. Even when the world rushes you, you move at your own pace. Even when others act without thinking, you pause and align. Even when the reward is invisible, you still do the right thing, not because it's easy, but because it's true. That's the Stoic way. That's what it means to act as if you are the best, not to fake your power but to honor it, not to chase approval but to carry integrity like a crown that no one else needs to see for it to matter. You write emails with intention. You answer messages with care. You treat co-workers, family, strangers all with the same dignity, because you've made it your way of life, because every choice matters, because you've decided that your values are not situational, they are structural. And over time, this becomes more than behavior. It becomes being. It becomes your nature. It becomes the rhythm of your days. And even if the world doesn't cheer for it, even if no one else ever sees the effort you do, and that is enough. This is not perfection. This is devotion, a way of treating life like it is sacred, moment by moment, breath by breath. And in that devotion, something incredible happens. Your life, ordinary on the outside, becomes extraordinary in spirit, because every act, no matter how small, is now tied to something higher, something honest, something unshakable. So you walk with presence, you choose with care, you live with clarity, and your entire existence becomes a quiet, steady echo of truth. Not because you need to prove anything, but because you have become someone who lives as if everything matters, and in doing so, you have become someone who truly does. To you, refined. This is not the end. It's not the final page. In truth, there's no final chapter, because to act as if you are the best is not a finish line, it's a direction. It is a path you recommit to, not once, but daily. It is not a destination you arrive at and sit upon. It is a lifelong rhythm, a cycle of returning again and again to your higher self. The Stoic knows this. Becoming is never done. The work is never over. And that is not a burden, it is a gift. Because as long as there is another breath, there is another step forward, another opportunity to become someone stronger, wiser, more aligned, another chance to choose differently, to act more intentionally, to walk with deeper grace and greater clarity. You don't wake up one day fully formed. You wake up every day and form yourself again, with your routines, with your focus, with your posture, your attitude, your habits. And the beautiful thing is, you don't need anyone else's permission to begin. You don't need validation to improve. You don't need the world to tell you what you already know deep down. You were meant to live with dignity, with courage, with relentless devotion to your potential. So what does this look like really? It looks like waking up and meeting your mind before the world does. It looks like asking, what do I stand for today? Before you scroll, before you speak, before you rush. It looks like choosing direction over distraction, alignment over approval, presence over performance. It's looking in the mirror not to assess your appearance, but to affirm your purpose, to ask, am I living like someone who respects their potential? Am I living in line with what I claim to believe? And when the answer is no, not shaming yourself but realigning. Because the mirror isn't a judge, it's a compass. It's an invitation, a quiet call to return to what matters. Refinement is not about perfection. It is not about constructing some flawless persona to impress the world. It is about the slow, powerful work of returning to your truth, especially when it would be easier to drift away. It is about rising with self-respect, falling with self-compassion, and walking with self-leadership every single day. You refine through practice, through ritual, through routine. You refine through recovery, not just from failure, but from distraction. You refine by getting honest with yourself, not just about your goals, but about your habits, your reactions, your compromises. This is soul work. It is not glamorous. It is not always visible, but it is the most important work you will ever do. Because the self you are becoming is the foundation of everything else. Your relationships, your health, your voice, your vision, they are all downstream from who you are choosing to be in this moment. So the Stoic does not wait. They don't wait to be called worthy. They don't wait for a title, a spotlight, a round of applause. They build worthiness through repetition, through devotion, through a daily dialogue between who they are and who they're becoming. They do not chase identity. They live it. They do not pretend to be disciplined. They practice it until it becomes a reflex, until it becomes woven into the texture of their decisions, their voice, their presence. They show up for themselves the same way a craftsman shows up for his craft, not for admiration, but because it is right, because it is sacred, and that sacred rhythm becomes a new kind of power, one that doesn't depend on momentum, one that doesn't crash when things go quiet, one that carries you through fatigue, through resistance, through discouragement, because your standard no longer needs fuel from the outside. It burns from within. You keep your word to yourself not because it's easy, but because you respect yourself too much to break it. You rise not because you feel like it, but because you said you would. You act not because the world is watching, but because you are. And that changes everything. This is what refinement looks like. It's not loud. It's not a spectacle. It's found in the way you say no when compromise whispers, in the way you step back from gossip, in the way you finish the task no one will praise, in the way you sit with discomfort and refuse to escape, in the way you breathe before you speak, in the way you own your attention and protect your peace like it is sacred ground. Over time, this becomes your foundation, and from that foundation, you move not perfectly, but powerfully, not frantically, but with focus, not with borrowed conviction, but with your own. You start to see what others miss, that greatness isn't something you finally arrive at. It's something you practice in the dark, something you become in the silence, something you embody when no one is clapping. And when you live this way long enough, something begins to shift, not just in how you feel, but in how you affect others. You become a mirror, a reminder, a reflection of what's possible. Not because you talk about discipline, but because you are discipline. Not because you recite philosophy, but because you live philosophy. You become a walking invitation, not for others to admire you, but for them to rise to meet their own standard, to remember who they could become, to return to their path. You act like the best version of yourself, not because it makes you better than anyone else, but because it brings you back to yourself, because it puts your feet on the ground, your eyes on the horizon, and your soul in alignment with something deeper than likes, clicks, trends, or approval. And that is where freedom lives, not in doing whatever you want, but in becoming someone you trust, someone you respect, someone who doesn't need to chase or compete or prove. You are no longer performing. You are no longer seeking. You are living fully, honestly, intentionally. And in that way, every day becomes a return, a chance, a quiet declaration. I will walk in truth today. I will show up in strength. I will act not for praise, but for presence. Not for applause, but for alignment. Not for ego, but for essence. Because the best version of you is not a fantasy. It is a reality waiting to be built. It is shaped through discipline, forged through choice, strengthened through silence, and awakened every time you choose courage over comfort, clarity over chaos, and integrity over image. You refined, not by accident, but by effort, not for show, but for self. And now, as this reflection comes to a close, let's settle into stillness. For just a moment, you've spent the last hour not chasing noise, not drowning in distractions, but returning to yourself, to the quiet place where real change begins. You've been reminded that the best version of you isn't buried in the future. It's built right here, through action, through presence, through quiet consistency. There's nothing more powerful than a mind that is aligned, a heart that is steady, a soul that is no longer waiting for permission to live fully, honestly, and intentionally. So as this day winds down, I invite you to let go of the noise of the world, the expectations, the doubts, the endless comparisons, and return to what cannot be taken from you: your choice, your discipline, your direction. You don't need to perform. You don't need to prove. You don't need to chase what the world promises. You only need to keep choosing one quiet, courageous step at a time to act as if you are already the person you were born to become. It's not about being perfect. It never was. It's about walking in alignment. It's about building trust with yourself. It's about becoming unshakable, not because life is easy, but because your foundation is steady. Breathe. You've done enough for today. And even if the path ahead feels uncertain, remember the next step is always within your control. The next choice, the next thought, the next action, that is where your power lives. So rest now, not because there is nothing left to do, but because resting is part of becoming. Let your mind settle, let your breath slow, let your spirit, for tonight, be still. Tomorrow will come, with its challenges and opportunities. But for now, you've returned to yourself, and that is enough. Sweet dreams.